people will just grab their coffees and join us. Morena, Mr Deputy Chair. It's lovely to see everyone here, our members from local boards and staff and elected members, and the wonderful Penny Webster, who's going to be joining us shortly. It's just awesome to have you here, Mrs W. So first of all, apologies. I've had a text from Councillor Darby with apologies for lateness, and Councillor Collins for lateness, and Councillor Sayers for absence. So I'm happy to move those. Someone will second. Member Wilcox. All those in favour, please say aye.
I'm just going to have to go down to the advisory panel.
Oh, that's fine. You just do what you need to, Councillor Stewart. That's all good. So that's been moved and carried. So we'll move on to declarations of interest. Any particular declarations of interest? No? I'll move the minutes of the 16th. Councillor Filipaina, are you happy to second?
Oh, yes.
I'll put that. All those in favour, please say aye. Aye. Against? Carried. And public input. So I'm going to invite Penny forward together with, I think you've got a few people with you, Penny, and she's going to talk to us about the local bill on mangrove control. Just when Penny and I thought we might never have to talk about mangroves again, we just are. Warm welcome.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Mr Mayor, good morning. Ex-colleagues, good morning. New colleagues, good morning. Yes, I didn't ever think I'd need to talk about mangroves again. However, Madam Chair, I was in a position a couple of weeks ago where I was in Thames having coffee with Mayor Gowdy, and she was telling me that the Thames Coromandel District Council and Hauraki District Council have put together a mangrove management bill, which is a local bill that they're hoping will go to Parliament, supported by their local MP. Can I first of all introduce Graham Purdy, who probably doesn't need any introduction, from the south, and of course Thomas Grace from the west, the Kaipara Harbour. The bill actually is about getting management plans put together for managing mangroves. As you know, the spread of mangroves in the coastal areas of all our councils have been increasing concern to local communities because they're narrowing the waterways and making it very difficult. Aerial photography from the 1940s, as we saw during the unitary plan, showed minimal mangrove incursions into our harbours and sandy white beaches, both in the Firth of Thames, the Kaipara Harbour, and in the northern reaches of Rodney. So I know that during the unitary plan this was a real issue, and I know that in the early stages of the unitary plan, both Roger Blakely and Penny Pirrett in those days, the original one that went out, said photographic evidence up to the 1940s. Unfortunately, in the unitary plan, it ended up as a resource consent and ended up back to the 1990s. I have to say that I have been supported in coming here today by the Omaha Beach community, by the Whangatiao Harbour, Sandspit Harbour, and the Warkworth Maharangi River Restoration Trust. The Restoration Trust, for example, which I am now chair of the advisory board, took many years and much money trying to get a resource consent to clean the river up. In the early days of Auckland Council, you remember we, with many of the staff, went down that river on the Jane Gifford, which was brought up from Waiuku and put together, and it was going to be a tourist venture for the town of Warkworth. Unfortunately, what's happened is the Jane Gifford, which is a flat scow, can now only go on our either side of the tide, so it actually can't get down the whole Maharangi River. And we've managed to get a resource consent to restore that river, which will be good for the town. But it's a lot of money and a lot of effort. So this bill actually is very good because it's not talking about removing mangroves. It's talking about removal, prevention, monitoring, detection, control, destruction or disposal, including hand removal, mechanical removal, whole tree removal and maintenance dredging. It actually is talking about setting up as part of the bill, and I've got a copy here that I can give the Secretary and they can give it to the councillors, to facilitate the removal of mangrove vegetation in coastal areas of each council to appropriate levels. So we're not talking about total removing. To restore, protect and enhance the amenity values or the ecosystems of the coastal area. And the management plan must include identification of areas within the coastal area, reference to maps, statement of objectives of the plan, a description of methods to be used, all the usual things. And the adoption and review of the mangrove management plans, which allows each council to establish a committee of council to prepare, adopt and implement the mangrove management plan. The committee must include one iwi representative. And within 3 months of the completion of the special consultative procedure, the council must prepare a final mangrove management plan. It gives the power back to the council and the communities to work together on these plans. Now, I'm aware that there, and particularly in Waiuku, thanks to Councillor Cashmore, they were able to get a resource consent and a 30-year consent to clean the mangroves there, but very dependent on who either your local board people are, your local council, you know, the councillor, how you, and even staff that are involved, whereas this bill will take it out of that. So I'm asking Auckland Council, and I know Mayor Goff was asked by Mayor Gowdy and wrote back and said, no, you wouldn't be involved at this stage, but I would really like a discussion at another time that you would support this bill through to select committee to allow the public to have their say on what they think. I'd like to ask Graham to make some comments because he will give you the costs of the issues that he's going through, and then maybe Thomas would like to tell you about the kaipara. Thank you.
Lovely, thanks Penny.
Yes, good morning everybody. My main concern is the cost of all this to whether you look at it that the local people do it or that ratepayers pay for it. It's been extraordinarily costly, the whole exercise. I've been involved in this since about 2001. So, and we've slowly made some progress, but we're doing Conifer Grove at the moment, which is under our management plan, and the consent, or the resource consent, is costing $26,000. And also now, with health and safety and everything, to get contractors to do it, it's somewhere between $87,000 per hectare to $114,000 per hectare. So the whole issue has become rather expensive. Secondly, I think somewhere along the line there needs to be a line drawn in regard to how much more we're going to allow the mangroves to expand. I realise the people on the eastern side have not quite the same problem, but on the Manukau, which has been the dumping ground for a number of years of everything that nobody wants, it's certainly now we're in the situation where the community want to get access to their waters, but they can't get it because of the mangroves. And as I said, the whole complex or the whole removal process is so complicated by officers of council who want this done and that done, helicopters used to remove them, that this has become almost too hard for some communities to handle.
Hi, just Penny's covered it very well, but referring to the Kaipara River, back in the middle 50s, we had an American frigate come up the Kaipara River. I remember that as a school kid and going down to see it. They were able to turn it around in the river. Now, you'd be very hard to turn a kayak round in the river, to be quite honest. It's progressively clogging up with the mangroves that have moved up from the Kaipara and up to the river. It's moving further and further up the creek. I was down there the other day just by chance and was really concerned about the build-up of the silt on the side of the Kaipara River and the narrowing of it because of the mangroves and the way they successfully stop every little bit of silt that comes down the river, and very little gets washed out to its natural source out with the Kuiper. It's just ongoing, and it's been a concern to me for some considerable time that we can't do anything about it. So it's just a small picture into what's happening, and it is clogging the creek up, and we now need to give it some undivided attention. And I would say the distance from either side of the creek is no, it's diminishing on a ever increasing and fast basis. I'll just leave it at that.
Thank you. I think we put our case reasonably succinctly. We'd like the committee to have a look at this bill and decide whether or not Auckland supports it. We're urging you to support it. Interestingly enough, as Glenn will probably attest, the Makarau, in the early days, the canoes used to come right up that Makarau River. I don't think they'd have much chance getting up there now. So it is an issue to everyone. Thank you, Madam Chair. I'm happy to take questions.
Thank you, Penny. Now, I'm just going to keep we've probably got time for maybe one or two questions. Just can you remind us of the time frame for this, if we were going to?
I think it's fairly imminent to be put into Parliament.
Okay. And I'm just, as you said quite correctly, the Mayor took advice and, quite correctly stated that we'd work this through at length in the unitary plan. But I think it might be one of those issues where there's probably nothing wrong with having a bit of a collective discussion and a bit of advice from staff about whether, what the downside of participating in this would be. We can't do that now because we don't have the information, and I don't want us to have a discussion on mangroves. They are the longest workshops I think I've ever sat through, and we don't need to do that now.
No.
So perhaps rather than go into a range of questions, if people are comfortable, we can follow this up with staff and perhaps organise a bit of a collective discussion on if there is a mind to look at some sort of support, or if not supporting the bill, where we would like to take this. People are comfortable. I think there's reasonable head nodding around the table. So Penny, thank you to you and Thomas and Graham, who have come along to support, and perhaps if you're happy for us to liaise directly with you on where we take this to.
I do actually have a copy of the bill.
That would be
if
fantastic.
Tam wants to.
We will hand that around so people
And
can read.
you'll be very delighted to know it's about 4 pages.
That's the upside
It's 2 pages of
it.
introduction.
Well, that's very good bill then.
It's fantastic.
I'm
well,
sure
I'd like
Mayor Goff
to.
and Councillor Fletcher will never remember them being that short before.
Well done. Well, I'd like to warmly thank Mrs Webster, Thomas Grace and Graham Purdy for their attendance. And seconded by Councillor Simpson. All those in favour, please say aye.
Aye.
Against? Carried. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Lovely to see you around the table. We miss you hugely.
I got on the bus this morning and decided I didn't really miss it.
I assure you it's better out.
Thank you.